I'm going to pass it on to my wonderful colleague, Mifra Malik, who's an investment analyst at Fairview, and she's going to facilitate our Q&A session. We didn't give you much time, Mifra. Sorry about that, but there you go. Off to you.
So thank you, Michelle, and our panelists for joining us today. We have a ton of exciting questions coming in, and if we don't get to your question today, we will follow up post-webinar. So to kick it off, I will send my first question to Daphne, which was from an anonymous participant. What challenges in the industry are still bothering you while building a fund as a leader?
Things that are still bugging me. So I think, you know, as I look back to when I first got into the industry, which was, I'm dating myself, in the late 90s, our numbers haven't really changed as much, but there has been some progress. I mean, you know, you look around, you do see more women-led funds, you do see more minority-led funds, and that's really amazing. But what bugs me is you do not see many, you see very few Black women in terms of leading funds. And so when you kind of dissect the different groups of kind of how are women winning and which women are winning, unfortunately, that number is still really, really low. So I'd say that still bugs me for the industry. And I'd say another thing that still bugs me is I still see it in rooms. It happens to me all the time, where when a woman says something, the rest of the people around the room sometimes hear it differently. Either they don't hear it, and then a man says the exact same thing, and it's now like nirvana, like all of a sudden a new thought was said, when it was actually just said a minute or two previously by a woman or by me. And so that still bugs me, is that, you know, we've come so far, but at the same time, a lot of times our voices aren't heard.
Thank you, Daphne, for that. And the next question I will kick off to Joanne. And the question is, do you have any advice on building relationships with the LP who did not commit to your fund? And this came in from Mayor.
My advice is to be tenacious, to continue the conversation, come back and ask additional questions. And I think it's very important to be proactive, to be outspoken, and to express your view, and also be careful who you talk to and what you say to them. So make sure that the people that you talk to and you're looking for advice, these are people that you trust, that are really interested in seeing you build a franchise.
Joanne. And the next question, I will kick that off to Kim. Any advice as a diverse emerging fund manager, especially around the challenge of being a smaller fund? What is the best way to approach this? And how is it the best way to present your track record? And this came in from Rachel from Red Bike Capital.
Okay, well, thank you for the question, Rachel. I don't know if I'm the one to ask about how to best present the track record, but you know, it's, as a small fund, it is challenging, and Fairview looks at, on our behalf, funds up to 500 million. So, but there could be a minimum size of some sort as well. So I'm not sure how large your fund is, but there could be instances where, say if a fund is 25 million, it just might not be large enough for us to invest in today, just as a matter of business risk. We like to make certain minimum commitment sizes, you know, even with Fairview's program, it could be 5 or 10 million. So we don't want to be an unduly large part of the fund. But remember, even if it is a no today, it's important to make the contact, to build the network, to tell us about your strategy, because, you know, hopefully we'll be able to say yes another day. Just keep at it.
Thank you, Kim. So the next question I have is really interesting given present times. And this one came in from Letitia for Cindy. how has your manager diligence process changed due to COVID-19 travel restrictions and vaccine mandates?
So our diligence process is pretty much the same in terms of the criteria that we look for emerging managers. We do a lot of work around the team, around team cohesion, and then understanding the firm's culture and team dynamic, and assessing the quality of the network of that particular fund manager and the depth and the breadth of the team in terms of having that they have the right network to source the deals and the strategy they want to prosecute. So at the high level, everything and all the parameters are the same. I would say that because of travel restrictions and the inability to gather physically, at least for the past year and a half, we continue to do more Zoom meetings, and we continue to actually just take smaller bites of that information over a period of time. So I think it is difficult to assess body language via Zoom. And so for those managers who have contacted us prior to COVID, we've already had that exposure and we can see that in the physical setting. But in the Zoom world, for us, we need more meetings and over shorter meetings, but over a longer period of time to properly assess. But I would say that given our network, we also do a lot of reference checks and what we call off-reference checks as well, and to validate some of our findings or to find out and go back and ask more questions if need be. So we also do what we call operations due diligence, which is very critical as part of our diligence process to check that the infrastructure, the network, and I mean like the computer networks and all the systems, the back office, the operations of the fund is sound as well, especially in the virtual world, that people can work at home and still be able to communicate and be able to invest and still conduct business as usual. So part of our check is to do operations diligence, and we've been doing that as part of our diligence forever. So that's not new, but we're paying extra attention to that these days, given that a lot of folks are working from home.
And now I'll kick off the last question for Natalie Jenkins. And this also came in anonymously, but it says, looking ahead, do you have any predictions, grand or otherwise, on what the future holds for women GPs?
I mean, I think as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, I think the numbers are getting better. I believe in numbers, like many of us. I'm very analytical, and I think that there is a strength and power in numbers. So I think that the future is optimistic for women GPs. I do. But I think we have to just be aware always that there are some, whether you believe it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, there are extra hurdles for women. There just are. And enough of trying to pretend like there's a nice way to say it. There are, right? And if you kind of know that going in, and you have some good mentors and sponsors, right? You need both. A mentor and a sponsor, they're not the same thing. But if you have people that are kind of supporting you and helping you on your journey, then I think you can be successful. Absolutely. But I think the numbers will help us because we can support each other through this, right? So if you come to me, I don't know who you are, but if you come to me and I give you a no, right? Guess when I say no to people, or I hear a no from my partner and they tell me, well, yeah, I told them no. Did they tell you why? Here's why: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I'm going to share that with you. Hope you receive it well. I'm going to tell you as kindly as I can. And then we keep in touch. I mean, that's what this whole business is about. It's about relationship building, right? And I follow my own advice. If I'm not going to be quiet, then I'm going to be kind. I'm going to tell you as kindly as I can, but I'm not going to mix words, right? So what does all that mean? I'm optimistic for the future. I think our numbers are getting better. As I alluded to earlier, they're getting better, but it's slow. That's why we need you to stay in the fight. But there's more of us now. There's more people like me and Kim and Christine and others that can support you, and try to be helpful. So the future, I think it's optimistic. I'm optimistic, but I put the caveat in. You just have to just be aware that you might get extra questions. There might be an extra hurdle in there. Your track record might get scrubbed 5 times. There's maybe 2 or 3. You might. It's possible. I'm not saying that I've heard that, but
Thank you, Natalie. And
course.
with that, I'll kick it off to closing for Joanne.
Thank you very much, Mifra. And this panel today has really been outstanding. And it's wonderful to be able to have all women and all of our voices. And I'd like to say the following in closing, and this is to all women. We must be advocates for each other. We have to be respectful, but proactive and outspoken. We have to be comfortable expressing your viewpoints. We have to be strategic, and we have to develop good listening skills. We have to proactively develop relationships of all types and be able to receive advice and become very good listeners. And first and foremost, over everything, we have to be able to be comfortable expressing our voices. We do not have to be like anybody else. We have to be comfortable with ourselves. And all of the women today have said that in different ways. And so on behalf of Fairview and everybody that served today on this panel, thank you so much for being a part of this all women's event today.